Today we're going to review the features of the Thermador Pro Series wall ovens. And to help me take you through the great features of these ovens, I've invited my colleague Kathy Dyler, who teaches the culinary programs for Purcell Murray in Southern California. What's the most important thing that we can impress upon a consumer before using their new appliances?
Well, the most important step is making sure that you read your user's guide. It will give you valuable information about the modes of cooking as well as valuable tips on using your oven.
You mean like taking the racks out for self-cleaning?
That's a very important one, yes.
You mentioned the modes, so why don't we have a look at this oven and you can give us a little bit of 101 about the oven and about those modes.
Okay. This is a large capacity oven that has two telescopic racks, a flat rack, and those racks can be positioned in any of the 7 rack positions in the oven. It also includes a rotisserie, a meat probe, and a broil pan for browning and broiling of your meats. And in this oven we also have 3 heating elements. The lower heating element at the floor of the oven is the bake element. We have the convection element and the fan in the rear of the oven, as well as the browning and broiling element at the top of the oven. When you are ready to cook, check the rack positions in your oven for the foods that you are baking. Choose your mode and choose your temperature, and then don't forget to select fast preheat.
Well, after all, it's a really large capacity oven,
it is.
and the fast preheat feature will bring it to temperature really quickly.
It will.
So the first mode is bake. Now, that doesn't seem too challenging.
It's a traditional bake mode, which has the heat from the top and heat from the bottom, which creates a dry, stable heat, which is really wonderful for dense cakes, pies, and breads, as well as meringues, souffles, and angel food cake. There is no reduction in the temperature when you're using the bake mode.
So any special recommendations about rack position in this mode?
Absolutely. The second and the third rack position are usually the best. Pies on the second rack because you get a little more heat from the bottom, cakes on the third rack.
Well, bake is pretty simple. So Kathy, I noticed that this Pro double oven actually has another mode called convection bake. Now, what would we use that mode for?
The convection bake mode is very similar to the traditional bake mode. However, it has the convection fan circulating the hot air. So it has very even cooking, and you can cook multiple racks in there, 2 racks in there at the same time. The one thing you do want to do is reduce the temperature by 25 degrees.
So pretty much that's the major convection rule. Baking, that temperature goes down by 25 degrees. And now we have a mode called true convection. Kathy, help, what do we do with this mode?
True convection is a wonderful mode for cooking. In the true convection mode, the convection fan circulates the heat around the oven. This will enable you to make multiple racks of cookies at the same time, or you can make a family dinner of several dishes in the oven at the same time with no transference of flavor. The one thing that you want to remember, though, is to lower the temperature by 25 degrees for baked goods, but you do not have to do that for your meats or vegetables or fish. One more important tip. When baking your cookies, scones, and biscuits, you want to make sure that you use a light-colored pan and a pan that has a slight lip on each end. We find that with darker pans, sometimes you get a little more brown on the bottoms than you would like.
Now we're coming to a mode called speed convection. Kathy, that sounds terrifying. What do we do with speed convection?
No, actually, speed convection is exciting. It is a time-saving method of cooking where you have no preheat. In the oven, all 3 of the elements go on, and so it's a very intense heat. You can put frozen foods into a cold oven, and it will cook to perfect doneness at the time the recipe calls for.
So the time savings really comes in with the no preheat.
No preheat, correct. Yes.
And you're not using microwave, you're using traditional heat, which is preferable for many people for slightly better results. And now we come to something really exciting, a rotisserie. Wow, that's a really great feature.
The rotisserie is wonderful. It's a wonderful feature to have in your oven. In the rotisserie mode, the food is actually circulating in the air, whereas in the convection mode, the air is circulating around the food. The great thing about a rotisserie is when the meat is circulating, it is self-basting itself, so it comes out very juicy and moist. Another thing that's nice about the rotisserie is that it's very easy to load. I just use the skewer, put it right in the center of the meat. You want to make sure that it's balanced. Put the prongs on, screw them down, and put them on the rack. Meats will cook in recipe time on the rotisserie. Just remember that there is a 12-pound weight limit. Also, it's very important that you put a pan at the bottom of the oven to catch the juices.
So it really seems pretty simple to use the rotisserie. Probably not use the meat probe with this one?
No, I think that might be a little awkward.
But when you think it's gone through the cooking time, get an instant read meat thermometer. But I think you have another tip too, don't you?
Yes, I actually like to use the old-fashioned meat thermometers that we put in our meats to check the temperature. As it comes around, you can see exactly what the temperature of your meat is.
So Kathy, I can see that for broiling we've got several options to choose from, and we know options are great, but they can be confusing. So let's demystify broiling.
With this Pro oven, you actually have 4 modes of broiling. You have broil and convection broil, and then both of those also can be used with max broil, which gives you 4 modes. Regular broil is great for your garlic bread. It's good for small pieces of fish and meat and vegetables, maybe shrimp. The max broil gives you a little more intensive heat if you want something to really brown. The convection broil actually circulates air at the same time, hot air at the same time. So therefore it's more evenly cooking along with searing the top of the meat.
Kathy, what's the really great thing about using the convection with broiling?
Oh, it's the moisture retention. Everything stays really moist with convection.
But there are 3 important tips for broiling that we really want you to take note of.
One of the tips is you do not want to preheat your oven any more than 3 to 4 minutes. It's not necessary, and that is the way your food will come out with the best results. The second is you want to use the broil pan that comes with the oven with the rack in it, because it will, especially with marbled cuts of meat, it will keep it from spattering in your oven. The third, very important one, is closed door broiling. You do not want to broil with the door open, even propped open a little bit.
So that's the thing about broiling. Direct heat plus the circulating heat gives us a really beautifully seared piece of meat, plus a lot of moisture stays in the food. So there's one more convection mode on the Thermador Pro oven, and that's Convection Roast. It sounds self-explanatory, but I think there are still a few tips that you'll find helpful.
Convection roast is ideal for cooking larger cuts of meat, poultry, vegetables, and even fish. As you've heard before, convection is a great moisture retention tool. The convection roast mode uses the upper heat and the lower heat, but the upper heat has a little bit more intensity to it to help in the browning with your turkeys and your meats. Roasting a turkey is so easy. You don't have to brine it, you don't have to turn it, and you don't have to baste it. The only thing you want to do is make sure that it's in a low-sided pan, and the broil pan from this oven is the perfect thing to use.
So what about temperatures, Kathy? What do you find works best?
I find the best temperatures for roasting a turkey and most meats is 325 to 350 degrees.
And we have a great tool with this oven that we like to use when we're roasting turkeys.
We have a meat probe, so you can insert the meat probe and cook your turkey to temperature rather than to time, which is much more accurate.
And I've noticed that when we put the probe in, it automatically goes to 160 degrees. So that seems very low if your recipe says 180.
Right.
But what happens during the resting time?
As the turkey is resting, the temperature is rising, but then also while it's resting, you can put all your side dishes in the oven under the convection mode, and all of a sudden, when the turkey is ready and carved, you have voila! An effortless Thanksgiving dinner.
Now the next mode we come to on the oven control panel is roast. Let's talk about what we're going to cook in the roast mode.
The roast mode actually uses the upper and the lower elements again, but the upper element has a more intense heat so that you get good browning on your meats and poultry.
So what's the difference then? What would you use this mode for that you wouldn't cook in convection roast?
The roast mode is suitable for brined meats, meats in a bag, and covered casseroles.
So if we are going to cook our meats in convection, we never brine them because of the
moisture retention.
But if you want to brine for that additional flavor, definitely use the roast mode. Well, we have explored a lot of the features of this Thermador Pro oven today. Remember, start with your user guide. It has great tips. When you read recipes, they don't tell you cook a pork tenderloin and roast vegetables at the same time. But now that you've had these tips from Kathy and Larissa, who've been doing this for a very long time, we can assure you, everything's possible. Get to know your great Thermador oven. You'll have a lot of fun using it.